To all who are here, let me just one thing. Let's see everybody at home. Shabbat Shalom to all who are here in person and to those who are with us virtually. We have a very special Shabbat this evening. Not only are we welcoming Shabbat with joy, we are thanking and honoring our family and friends. We have Rabbi Ben and Erica Cass to lead us in our singing. We welcome any of our Keshet Rising folks. We have a special anniversary, and it is also Women's History Month. So we're going to start with the Nigun.
The speaker.
Oh, and of course, we have David Fishback as our guest speaker this evening. Please join me as we read together on your handout, Blessing to our friends and family. Here with you beside me, I feel so greatly blessed. Life's joys can be better when shared with family and friends. We thank you for being here. Shabbat is here. It is a time to be together, a time to rest. As we sit together, feel each other's hands as a chain around the table, we enjoy the feeling of starting our Shabbat together. As a group, let us release the past week, release its joys as well as its sorrows. The last week is now part of our own personal history. May its lessons be well learned. Allow us to use this Shabbat to help us rest and prepare our mind and body for the week ahead. And may this Shabbat be filled with joy and peace. I'd like to call up Louis Blank and Dan Yost to read Let There Be Light and light the candles. Before we say the blessing, and my son wants to say Mazel Tov to Louis and Dan on their 6th wedding anniversary and their 18th year together.
Let there be light. May we be blessed with the light of dignity, creation, and freedom. May we be blessed with life, joy, and love and peace. Let there be joy. Let there be peace. Let there be light. Let there be Shabbat. Amen.
The blessings can be found on the top of page 16.
Ruach Shekhinah, Eloheinu ruach haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvoteya v'tzivtanu להדליק נר של שבת.
Join me on page 20 as we read together, Bless Us Enough. source of all goodness, as we join in Shabbat worship, we ask your blessing. Give us health enough to perform our daily tasks, wealth enough to answer our needs, compassion enough to feel the needs of others. Give us strength enough to recognize our faults, wisdom enough to understand your laws, loyalty enough to discharge our duties. Give us courage enough to be true to the best within us, charity enough to see the best in others. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to feel your presence. We now begin the Kabbalat part of the Shabbat service. The role of this beautiful weekly service is to help us appreciate and celebrate the fact that God has created the world, that God has made the Shabbat a special day, that God's divine presence enjoys a special place on Shabbat. We will sing our way through the Psalms tonight, starting on page 26 with L'Hu Naranana. Sing out with joy to God and celebrate our liberating power.
L'Hu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu L'Hu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo L'Hu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu L'Hu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo El Gadol Adonai Umelech Gadol Al Kol Elohim El Gadol Adonai Umelech Gadol Al Kol Elohim L'Hu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu Naranana l'Adonai Nariya Litzo Yishenu Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo Nikadma Bana Betoda Bismiro Nariya Lo
Before we move on, Erica, can you come this way just a little bit more? So we can see it. We continue with Psalm 96, Shir Ladonai, found on page 28.
Shiru l'Adonai Shir Chadash Shiru l'Adonai Kol Haaretz Shiru l'Adonai B'chu Shemo Asur Miyom Leom Yeshuato Approve Agoyim Kevodo Olamim Biblota Ki Gadol Adonai Umulam Eyon Dorahu Al Kol Elohim Lai 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 Kol Elohim Amim Elilim Adonai Shmaim Asa Od Hada Lepanav V'Tiferet V'Mikdasho Abul Adonai Nishbot Amin Abul Adonai Kavod Va'od Abul Adonai Kevod Shemo Zomincha Ol Chatotav Shachamol Adonai Yad Kodesh Inu Mipanav Kol Haaretz Imu Vagoyim Adonai Malach Atikon Tevel Vatimon Yadinamim Ve'Mesharim Meismechu Hashamayim V'Tagel Haaretz Iramaya Uvelo Yarosadai L'chol asher bo Adirannenu kol hatziyah al mipnei Adonai Kiva Yishbot haaretz Yishbot tevel v'tzedek Ve'amin ve'emunato
Seeds of light shine for the righteous. Joy reigns for the honest of heart. Be joyful, holy people. Rejoice in seeking God's holiness. Or Zarua can be found on the top of page 31.
O Zarua Dat Tzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Dat Tzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Dat Tzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Latzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Latzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Latzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Latzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Zarua Latzadik O Yishrei Lev Simcha O Yishrei Lev Simcha Lai nai 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 na na nai lai na nai 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 na na na
Psalm 99 recognizes that although much that occurs on earth is imperfect, when we call on God, we know that we will be answered with fairness and offered forgiveness. So please sing along at the start at the bottom of page 34.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Eishahavu Lehakosho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Eishahavu Lehakosho. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishacharu Lehakodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishacharu Lehakodsho. Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Romemu.
We are now ready to welcome Shabbat with the Lecha Dodi, which can be found on page 40. We will chant verses 1, 2, 5, and 9 together. When we get to verse 9, we rise in our body or in our mind and turn to welcome Shabbat's divine presence.
Aidai lecha dodi likrat kala neshabat nekabela. Aidai lecha dodi likrat kala neshabat nekabela. Shamo v'zachor b'divorcha ishmianu el amcha Adonai echad u'shmo echad Shem tiferet le'itila Aidai lecha dodi ikrat elah Neshabat nekabelai Aidai lecha dodi likrat kala B'nei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha Ki makor haberacha Mirosh mikedem mesucha Sov maaseh v'machshvati Laila lecha dodi likrat kala Neshabat nekabelai Aidai lecha dodi likrat kala Neshabat nekabela. Verse 5. Hitori tori ki vaorech umiori uri shidaberi kivod Adonai alayich nilai lechato likrat kala de Shabbat nikabelan yairei lechadodi likrat kala de Shabbat nikabelan. Ovi v'shalom tevala Gam v'simcha utzola toch emunei am segula boi chala naidai lecha dodi rat kalat Shabbat mikabelai yaidai lecha dodi likrat kalat Shabbat nikabelai.
Please remain standing as we begin the Ma'ariv service, the evening service for the day of Shabbat, with the call to prayer, to bless the one who blesses. Turn to page 50 for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Haborach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated and join with me on the bottom of page 51 as we read Twilight People. As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight. For twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. We are all twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles, at the intersection of histories, or between place and place. We are crisscross paths of memory and destination, streaks of light swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither nor all. May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to the God who transcends all categories and definitions. May the in-between people who have come to pray be lifted up into this twilight. We cannot always define, we always say a blessing. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the evening twilight.
Umavir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uben laila Adonai tzvaot shemo El chai v'kayam tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hamari v'aravi.
Amen.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Amcha משפטים. אותנו לימדת, אותנו לימדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו ושוכבנו, בנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך ומצוותיך לעולם ועד. כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגה יומם בלילה, יומם בלילה. כי אהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמי. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל, אוהב עמו ישראל. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
We continue reading together on the top of page 65, Pride, which was written by one of our former rabbis, Rabbi Leila Galberner. As we recite these words from Torah, let us always remember that we are free. Let us wear our freedom with pride. Let us wear all our identities and our wholeness with pride. As human beings and as Jews, as lesbians and as gay men, as bisexual and as trans folks, as queer people and as straight people, as women and as men, as parents and as children, as family and as friends. As we rejoice in Shabbat, let us sing a proud new song and work for the day when all people will walk the earth in freedom and with pride. 66.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת.
Please join me at the bottom of page 69 as we read together Rebirth. As a midwife guides the newborn to life, you brought forth our people from Egypt, the place of narrowness and bondage. As a parent, you have watched over us with love and understanding. You revealed your love for us when you parted the waters of the Sea of Reeds. We remember your saving hand and sing the song that Miriam and Moses sang, a song of joy and peace. We now sing the Michamocha, a prayer that thanks God for redeeming us from Egypt. It is an excerpt from the song that the biblical Israelites sang after crossing the Sea of Reeds to safety. Page 74.
Michamocha, 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 Elim Adonai. Michamocha, 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 edabat kodesh, lo rati lo ose vele, lo rati lo ose vele. La na 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 na
Help us, dear God, to find peace each night as we lie down and renew our spirits each day as we rise. Page 79, Ashkivena.
Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, Hamidenu Malkei, Ulechaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, Hamidenu Malkei, Ulechaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim. Ashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu malkeinu l'chaim.
We now take time to say our prayers individually, whether they be the prayers of the Amidah that are found on pages 88 to 106, or the prayers in your heart, or to meditate on the spaces between the words. Rise if you so desire, as we scroll through the pages on the screen. Tonight, we will come back together on page 102. If you are not finished, please continue your personal prayers. When you are finished, please have a seat. Please rise, page 88.
Mishpachah tiftach. Ufi agi tilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Mishpachah tiftach.
I said we were gonna come back to page 102, but in reality it is page 105. In the middle of the page, we have this piece that was written by one of our dear members, Jerry Goldberg. And I thought it would be appropriate to read together on Family and Friends Shabbat. Please join me. As we stand in the presence of God, we give thanks that we are able to celebrate our sexuality and our heritage. Give us the strength, O God, to be true to ourselves and others as good, deep Jews to their families and friends. May we never suffer for who we are, and may we always be able to live honestly, openly, and at peace with ourselves and the world around us. We give thanks also for the abounding love of friends that come to us through the creational family and from so many other sources. Help us, O God, to be open to the warmth and affection of these friendships and to return to them understanding, compassion, and love. Grant each of us the ability to reach out to a special friend and to share with that person a sense of fulfillment and an abiding love. Eternal God, may you grant harmony in our lives, even as you ordain harmony in the universe. Amen. Continue on page 106.
Oh, say shalom b'roma. Oh, say shalom aleinu. Kol Yisrael. Kol Yoshvei Tevel. V'imru. Oh, say shalom b'roma. Hallelujah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ve'imru. Amen. Oh, say shalom b'roma. Oh, yeah, say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Ve'imru. Amen.
Within this hour of prayer, we take time to pray for those who are ill. While we are reading the first half of the prayer on page 119, if those of you on Zoom have other names that may not be on our list, please put them on the chat to be read by Mitchell after we add any names from those who are here in person. Page 119. Within this hour of prayer, how can we not pray for those who are ill? We pray for ourselves and for our friends, for those we know and those we don't, for those we love and those we don't. We pray for a healing of the body and a healing of the soul. a healing of the mind and a healing of the spirit. May it be your will, our God and God of our ancestors, Sarah and Abraham, Rebecca and Isaac, Leah, Rachel, Zilpah, Bilhah, and Jacob, the refuah shlemah mehirat, a full and speedy healing, be sent to all persons who are ill or suffering, especially those whose names we say now. Chris Miller, Jerry Goldberg, Sarah Jane Garden, Art Liebman, Catherine Tarabokia, Morris Umansky, Mark Levine, Rabbi Laurie Green, Fred Fishman, former member, William Jackson, friend of Elise Wander, Randy Wyatt, friend of Larry Neff, Anna Paggi, friend of Elise Wander, Cinnamon Snipes, daughter of Barbara Goldberg and Lysandra Brady, Jody Tabbs, friend of Elise Wander, Jan Hess, Hermione Gladstone, mother of David Sobelson, Lynn Gelzer, friend of Barbara and Nancy, Noel Elliott, husband of Joanna Shearer, Jack Weinstein, cousin of Stuart Sotsky, Shelley Blank, Olivia Pickett,
Steve Schwartzberg. Chris Whitman, Brian Green.
Ronald Paul.
Mitchell, do you have any names for us?
Becky Margrave, Beth Rossell, Barbara Fox, Stuart Baum, Catherine Ferreira, Latina Green, Janice Koch, Reuven Ben Zeev, Mallory McDonough, Maureen Bray, Sue Wagner, Mindy Steiner, Richard Ryder, Charlie, Lynn Gelzer, Helen Feinberg.
Sing together on page 120.
Mishpachah Avotenu Nikor Abraham Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishpachah Imotenu Nikor Abraham Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlemah, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say,
This is not a drush. We have a guest speaker, but I just had a couple things I wanted to say, which will only take 2 minutes. We just celebrated the joyous holiday of Purim. However, this week's Torah portion has a different sobering mood. It includes the worshiping of golden calf and the shattering of the tablets. But for an in-depth discussion, please join us tomorrow morning for our Shabbat morning services led by Larry Neff. Tonight I bring you 2 short pieces from the portion of Kitisa. As Laurie Safran, who is the Planning and Allocations Director of the Jewish Federation of Greater Middlesex County writes, it deals with several topics, including a census of the Jewish people in which each person donated a half shekel and was counted. The people's half shekel contribution, which was supposedly decided by God, formed a communal fund for the construction of the tabernacle. By contributing together, the Jewish people united in purpose as one nation, and in doing so, strove toward the common goal of building the tabernacle, where they could best worship God. Regardless of each person's financial means, they attained a spiritual equality by each donating the identical amount. And since it happened to occur after the sin of the golden calf, it was probably meant to restore the entire people's closeness to God. Kitisa demonstrates the good that may come from a communal action. Our work unites our community in a common cause, in respect and understanding for all Jews, and in sensitivity of the plight of those in need. With our family and friends and other members of our community working together, we can overcome personal and community struggles. Rabbi Sandra Lawson also realizes there is some heady stuff about this portion, but she also notes that there is a gem in this week's Torah portion. God says to Moses in a set of verses that have become one of our most beloved prayers, the Vishamru, and they shall keep Shabbat. The children of Israel shall keep the Shabbat, observing the Shabbat through the ages as a covenant for all time. God speaks to Moses, declaring that we shall keep the Sabbath as our day of rest. God says that observing the Sabbath signifies our bond with the divine. By keeping Shabbat, we are striving to be holy as God is holy. On Shabbat, we imitate God's creation of the universe, creating and working for 6 days, then stopping to rest and refresh our souls on the 7th day. So please join me on page 82 as we sing the command to observe Shabbat, the Shamra.
Vishamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ידי ביני ובני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים את הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
Please turn to page 128 for the Aleinu. Rise if you are able. The prayer that reminds us it is up to us to help to repair the world.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו גגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל עמונם. אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. היום ההוא Hayom ha'u yeh Adonai echad, U'shemo echad.
Please be seated. Turn to page 134. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flames. Blessed is the flame that burned in hearts' hidden depths. Blessed are the hearts that with honor ceased to beat. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flames. We remember those whose yahrzeits, the anniversaries of their death, are observed by our members in the coming week. And if there's anybody on Zoom, you can put it in chat as well. Joseph Gottesman, grandfather of Andy Kosarsky. Arthur Magid, uncle of Carl Spatz. Bessie Mannheimer, mother of Barbara Goldberg. Abraham Most, cousin of Morris Umansky. Dorothy Naretsky, mother of Martin Naretsky. James Olson, partner of Gerald Goldberg. June Schutz, mother of Mary Hubbard. Janice Valerio, friend of Robert Margrave and David Fox. Romaine Bell, cousin of Morris Umansky. Dora Ryder, grandmother of Scott Ryder. Angela Carter, aunt of Alex Carter. Sylvia Youngman, aunt of Joel Wind. David Grossman, maternal grandfather of Joseph Pomper. Philip Magid, uncle of Carl Spatz. Cheryl Slanek, wife of Nancy Polikoff. Beatrice Blank, grandmother of Louis Blank. Donald Haynes, friend of Erica Cass. Joseph Lehman, maternal grandfather of Markel Hoffman. Shelley Lumberg, niece of Alan Armis. Do we have any from the chat?
Rosemary Swiderski.
If you are in a period of mourning or observing a yahrzeit, please rise in body or in spirit. As the congregation says to you on page 141, Hamakom Yinachem Esem Soch Sha'ar Avelei Zion B'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. And if it is your custom to stand with those who are mourning, please rise. The mourner's cottage can be found on page 142. Yizkara, Yizkara, Shmei Rabba. Yalma, Yibrach, Yerusei, Yamlichma, Pusei. V'chayechon, V'yomechon. V'chayei B'chol Beis Yisrael. V'agala, V'zmin, Karim, V'yimru, Amen. Shmei Rabba, Borach, Olam, Le'anamaya. Yizbarach, Yishbarach, Yizbar, Yizramam, Yiznaseh. Yizadar, Yizaleh, Yizhalal, Shemei Kudisha, Richu. Le'elam, Minkol Berchasa, V'shirasa. Tushbachasa, V'nechamasa. Damiram, V'yalma, V'yimru, Amen. Yehi Shlomo Rabba, Min Shemaya. L'chaim Aleinu, V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Rabba. Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yal Kol Yisrael, V'yiruru, Amen. O God, healer of broken hearts and binder of wounds, grant consolation to those who mourn. Give them strength and courage in their grief, and restore to them a sense of life's goodness. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated. And I'd like to call upon Deborah Hyman, Director of Membership, for some announcements. Great wife. Where is she coming?
Shabbat shalom, everyone. As Paula just mentioned, I am the Director of Membership, and it is my distinct pleasure on behalf of our Board of Directors to welcome all of our members, friends, and family to tonight's Shabbat service. Our Shabbat services are held every Friday night at 8 p.m. and Saturday morning services are held on the second and fourth Saturday of each month. Tomorrow morning Shabbat service starts at 10 a.m. and will be led by our IDF. Thank you, Paula Morris and Rabbi Shalva and Erica Cass for a wonderfully inspiring and joyous segue into our precious Shabbat. Also, thank you to our congregation's president, Mitchell Haynes, who has been our virtual host extraordinaire for quite a long time. We are grateful for tonight's Own Egg, which is sponsored by Louis Blank and Dan Host in honor of their anniversary. Tonight, we will be skipping our traditional Shabbat announcements to allow enough time for our special guest speaker. For you to keep apprised of our activities and programs, Betnish sends an email blast every Wednesday, which is loaded with our upcoming events. For those of you who would like to receive these weekly emails, please send your request to the following email: administrator@betnish.org. Also, check our Facebook page for weekly updates. Please join us for Dhamma Long and the rest of our service.
Don't know lama Hashem Allah, Terem ko yitzirni ra, et natsa v'chefzo ko, zamel shimoni kra, acharei kivod hakol, v'bado yimno nora, vehu haya vehu oveh, vehu yeh b'tifara, hu echad v'yein sheni, Amshilo leachbira, lireshi v'litachli, v'lo ha'oz v'hamitzvah, dehu eli v'chago ali, dehetzuchev li v'yetzara, unisi umanos li, manakosi v'yom ekran, v'yado avkidruchi, yerisham yamira, Imrochi gidiyati Adonai li velo ira Adon olam Hashem ala v'teriko yitzini ra Inatsa v'chefzo go Tzar melech shemo nikra Yananai nananai 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 Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi Ben and Erica. Okay. David, if I say we saved the best for last, will I get all points back for not mentioning your name at the beginning?
Should we turn our chairs around? Paula?
Yeah, so as I'm going to introduce David, he is on Zoom. So please turn your chairs around. And he should be coming. That's Mitch. Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you. So David Fishback is the P-Flag dad and first visited Betnish in 2000 with a contingent of fellow members from Temple Emmanuel of Kensington. Shortly thereafter, he and his wife Bobby formed the Temple's Kulanu Committee for LGBTQ+ outreach and wrote the first chapter in the Union for Reform Judaism's Kulanu, All of Us, a program and resource guide for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender inclusion. He's a former chair of the Montgomery County Board of Education Citizens Advisory Committee on Family Life and Human Development, past board member of the Metro DCP FLAG, and now chapter co-chair for Maryland Advocacy. He has been a leading advocate for LGBTQ plus children in Montgomery County for more than 20 years. And I know that personally, being a retired teacher now retired from Montgomery County. If you mention anything that had to do with support of LGBTQ children or curriculum, David Fishback's name appeared. He also organized PFLAG's Amicus Curiae brief defending the Montgomery County Public School Gender Identity Guidelines, which resulted in the federal district court's dismissal of the suit, which is now on appeal to the United States Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. He's going to tell you a little bit more about himself. And one more thing, he's known a good friend of mine since he was in 5th grade. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce David. Hey, David, are you there?
Hi, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you very, very much for the introduction, Paula. I really appreciate it. Before I get started, I'm going to put into the chat some links that may be useful to people or sort of relevant to some of the things I'll be talking about. The wonderful thing about Zoom is that it's easy to do. But in Shabbat Shalom, the Metro DC chapter of PFLAG has a dual role. First, supporting families as they enter what may be unexpected journeys with the coming out of their gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary, or questioning loved ones. And second, public advocacy in both governmental and private sector spheres. Well, when Joe Pomper asked me to talk this evening, he asked that I first talk about my own family's journey. Given that Paula so kindly talked about some of the things that I was also going to talk about advocacy with PFLAG, I'll have a little more time to talk about these things. My wife Bobby and I have 2 sons. As they were growing up, we lived conventional liberal lives in Montgomery County. In 1997, that changed, at least the conventional part, when our younger son, Dan, then 15, came out to us. On the night he told us, one of the first things he did was give us the phone number for Metro DC PFLAG, which had been given to him by the 2 moms of one of his friends. Now, this was during the AIDS crisis. So in addition to being thrown for a loop generally, we were particularly scared for Dan. But anecdote number 1. Bobby and I went to our first PFLAG community meeting at a church in Bethesda. The first thing we saw when we entered the church was a table by the door with pamphlets about dying. So we asked, "Is this the PFLAG meeting?" "Oh no," we were told, "this is the Hemlock Society." The PFLAG meeting is downstairs. Well, things got better after that. We were graciously welcomed by other parents there. And after the meeting, we chatted with the chapter president who told us, "I promise you, someday you will be advocates." But I thought to myself, "I promise you, we will not." It was hard enough just to make it through our own transition, since so many of our expectations for Dan had suddenly changed. It was clear that he was not going to grow up and bring home a nice Jewish girl. Well, 2 years later, in 1999, our older son, Mike, then in college, came out to us. We were thunderstruck, but we were much better prepared. Still, the thought that neither Dan nor Mike might ever have families of their own was difficult for us. Anecdote number 2. Just before Dan came out, Mike learned that Dan was gay from mutual friends during their rehearsals for their high school's production of hold on now, Fiddler on the Roof, in which Mike was Tevye and Dan was Muttle the tailor. It gave Mike a wonderful opportunity to be able to yell at his younger brother without being chastised by anyone. But Dan was terrified that Mike was going to come down on him like a ton of bricks. Instead, Mike told Dan that he too was gay. They decided that Dan would come out first and that Mike would eventually follow. Mike stayed in the closet until he came out to us 2 years later. Our sons told us they always knew we would love them. They were only afraid that we would be disappointed. And the stories of their coming out, both Dan's when he was in high school and Mike later as an educator, our links to those are in the chat. The piece that Dan wrote for Mensch, Stories of Queer Jews, was called Times Are Changing, Reb Tevye. And indeed they were. As we became empty nesters, Bobby and I saw a wonderful therapist, another PFLAG parent, Kathy Turk, who helped us educate ourselves about homosexuality. Our children are now happy, well-adjusted adults. We are thankful to PFLAG, which helped us learn more and more and enabled us to reach out to others. Contrary to what I thought when the chapter president promised us that we would be advocates, we did become advocates. And over the years, we have spoken with and counseled many other parents about their journeys, while also engaging in public advocacy to make life better for LGBTQ people and their families. One evening on our way to the JCC with Dan to attend a gay-themed one-man show, we bumped into Hannah Littman of blessed memory. I knew Hannah because she had been PTA co-president with me at Mike's elementary school. She soon contacted us in her role as religious liaison for Metro DC PFLAG and asked if we would attend a meeting at her home with people from Bet Mishpachah. Bet Mish wanted to reach out to suburban synagogues, and Hannah knew that Bobby and I were very active in our congregation, Temple Emmanuel in Kensington. We readily agreed and had a lovely conversation with your then Rabbi Bob Sachs and congregant Robin Katcher. Thereafter, in May 2000, we organized Temple Emmanuel's first service focusing on gay matters, where speakers were PFLAGers Kathy Turk and Hannah Littman, and our own Rabbi Warren Stone. Now, anecdote number 3. Since we had been active members of Temple Emmanuel for many years, and our sons were known and loved by many in the congregation, we were not surprised when a huge number of people came to that May 2000 service. What did surprise us was that the evening became a big coming out party. So many people told us about their lesbian and gay relatives, friends, co-workers. Suddenly, a subject about which there had been silence became safe. It was our first experience with the power of out. Well, in November 2001, Bet Mish members Ken Carroll and Stephanie Handel were guest speakers at a Temple Shabbat service. And the next spring, as Paula mentioned, at Bet Mish's invitation, we organized a contingent from Temple Emmanuel for a dinner and Shabbat service at Bet Mish. And that same spring, we organized our Kulanu committee, which Paula also mentioned. We did the simple basic things like bringing an LGBTQ bookshelf to our temple library, having a table at the Capitol Pride Festival, and initiated an annual Kulanu Shabbat service. Anecdote number 4. When we organized the Kulanu committee, only one person in the congregation publicly questioned the decision, writing to Rabbi Stone that he was worried that we would be welcoming those people to our community and that they would harm our children. The rabbi passed along the congregant's letter to us, and Bobby wrote to him, explaining why the committee was important and closing with the observation that those people are our children. The dissenter remained a temple member and never said a negative word again. Throughout the last 2 decades, Temple Emmanuel has had an annual Kalanu Pride Shabbat services, publicly stood up for civil marriage equality, and before COVID was a consistent presence at Capitol Pride activities. Our congregation has many out LGBTQ members, both people who have joined and children who have felt comfortable coming out in our community. When Rabbi Stone announced his retirement, we hired as his successor Rabbi Adam Rosenwasser. Rabbi Adam is gay, but that fact, while known, was never an issue during the rabbinic search, not because it was a subject to be avoided, but because it simply did not matter. But back to PFLAG. In spring 2002, the Metro DC chapter asked members of Montgomery County to attend a school board meeting at which a proposal was being presented to allow discussion of sexual orientation in the secondary school health education curriculum. At that time, the Montgomery County Public Schools, MCPS, had a gag rule, as Paula well remembers, had a gag rule in health classes. There could be no discussion of such matters. After much debate, the proposal was tabled on the ground that the Citizens Advisory Committee that had made the proposal had only a handful of active members, so it could not be seen as necessarily representative of the entire community. Well, they opened up membership. They wanted a lot of people. I applied for membership and was appointed. And early in 2003, I was elected chair of the committee. Now, I don't have the time this evening to go through the long struggle of PFLAG's involvement in that struggle. But suffice it to say that PFLAG provided much support and expertise in making the case that MCPS needed to provide information based on the wisdom of every mainstream American medical and mental health professional associations. Right-wing groups attacked our efforts using bogus litigation tactics, first to stop and then later to slow down progress. As committee chair and later as Metro DC PFLAG board member and then chapter advocacy chair, I was one of the leaders resisting those attacks. We, and I mean we because so many people were involved, we won all the political battles, developed amicus curiae briefs, successfully supported MCPS, and eventually secured complete victory in 2014. Since then, MCPS has been in the forefront of progress for LGBTQ students, both in matters of curriculum and policy. Metro DC PFLAG has been an integral force in securing and protecting this progress. And again, for anyone interested, the chronicle of this struggle is on the Metro DC PFLAG website, a link to which I have put in the chat. Last summer, the Maryland Federal District Court dismissed an attempt by the right wing to halt implementation of a key section of the MCPS gender identity guidelines, which Metro DC PFLAG helped to develop. And the court heavily relied on our amicus brief. Oral argument of plaintiff's appeal to the Fourth Circuit was argued yesterday. It is going to be a long struggle. The panel we got included a George H.W. Bush appointee, a very conservative man, and 2 Trump appointees. We do not anticipate victory in this appeal at this stage, but we are fully prepared, working with MCPS to appeal to an en banc panel of the Fourth Circuit, which we hope will prevail. We think the numbers are there, but then it will most likely go to the Supreme Court, where it will certainly be a challenge, but it's a challenge we will not shrink from. PFLAG, and indeed all of us, have accomplished so much in this century. We must keep it up in order to protect what has been achieved and to help those who are still in oppressive circumstances. Now, one of the challenges in this metropolitan area is complacency. Metro DC PFLAG is always looking for volunteers, and we would love it if members of Bet Mish could help particularly with the more than a dozen community groups through which we provide support for families who are not as far along on their journey as the rest of us. In the chat is a link to a list of our community groups. Some of them became inactive during COVID, but by summertime, we should have everything back up and running. The web link there will probably change because we're updating our website, and there'll be more information in the next few weeks. Anyway, thank you for inviting me, and I'd be happy to field any question or simply share stories.
Anybody have a question here? Anybody on Zoom have a question?
I just have a point of information. Much earlier than all of that took place, Lee Walzer and I spoke at Temple Emmanuel as representatives of Bet
I
Mish.
remember.
So like in the early 90s, I recall, I mean, based on what else happened in my life, it had to have been the early 90s, because I know it was before I was president of Bet Mish. I was president in 94, so it should have been early 90s. Just, you know, the congregation was welcoming before you and your family pushed it a lot farther. That was all.
Well, thank you very much, Ruth, for that. I know that Lee had spoken the temple, I think in 2000 or 2001. I did not realize that he had spoken earlier. And that is really good. Rabbi Stone was someone who was very supportive.
Yeah.
Early in his time there, however, you know, he started about 88, I guess, 1988. He was only our second rabbi. And shortly, quickly into his rabbinate, he did a baby naming for a lesbian couple. And back then ended up getting a lot of negative feedback. And it really wasn't ultimately until congregants began coming forward that Rabbi Stone, I think, felt comfortable doing what he needed to be done. And Rabbi Stone was incredibly helpful. He's the one that told us about the positions of the Reform movement. And we had no idea about that when we came and spoke with him, how supportive at a national basis the Union for Reform Judaism was, and told us about the Colano program. We got a hold of the Colano handbook, and a few years later, as Paula mentioned, we wrote the opening chapter for the revised version of it. But the interesting thing that we had, though, is that even in a liberal congregation, the topic was never broached. And it wasn't until people came out that the dam broke. And fortunately, in our community, when the dam broke, it broke our way. I'll give you one anecdote, real quick one. In 2007, it was the first time civil marriage equality was an issue in the Maryland General Assembly. And during the legislative session, I wanted to put up a sign on Connecticut Avenue, a main thoroughfare in Montgomery County, saying that we support that civil marriage as a civil right, and that we were in support in our congregation. And I mentioned it to Rabbi Stone, and he said, well, bring it to the board. So I had all of my materials put together, and I was going to make this big, long pitch. And I went to a board meeting and laid it all out. And there was huge discussion at this board meeting. And all of that discussion centered on how do we angle the sign so it gets the best visibility. That was a delightful experience. And again, it was another symbol of the nature of our congregation. And, you know, the many things that have been going on over the years that I am very pleased about, and that I hope more and more congregations have. I think certainly most Reform and I think conservative congregations in the Washington metropolitan area are affirming now, and not quietly so, but affirmatively so. And that's quite a change in 20 years.
Well,
I may have my dates wrong, because I know that Rabbi Stone was there when Lee and I spoke, but I really thought it was
Well,
before
I don't
was
know what,
president.
yeah, it was in 2000 or 2001 that Lee spoke. He spoke after Kathy Turk and Hannah Littman spoke, but before, I think before Ken Carroll and Stephanie Handel spoke.
Yeah,
But it was about his book about being gay in Israel. It was fascinating.
which is a separate thing, because when he didn't do that, when he and I were there, it was before the book, so.
Oh.
But Rabbi Stone was there, so if he didn't come
Yeah.
to 98, that doesn't make
No,
sense.
no, 88.
88,
So
yeah,
Ruth and David.
right. That makes sense.